Do you think that AI will destroy agencies?
Yes.
Brent Weaver is the CEO of E2M Solutions, a white-label digital agency with over 400 people working across websites, marketing, and AI services.
You can't go to a web designer and say, hey, you're building these websites for me. So what you do day in, day out. I want you to build an agent that does your job, because that team member is going to say, well, what happens when I'm done?
He built and sold his own agency, then created UGURUS, which was acquired by Cloudways and later became part of DigitalOcean.
An AI-first team member, it's a team member building websites using AI to assist their work. An agentic agency is a team member that is engineering a system that builds a website. And those are two very different things.
This conversation is about the shift from the traditional agency to what Brent calls the agentic agency, where AI agents start doing the actual delivery work and agency owners have to decide how fast they can adapt.
And I think right now you're going to have agencies that start up and they're agentic from day one.
Brent, do you think that AI will destroy agencies? Do you think this is the end of the traditional agency era?
Yes. But I think that maybe there's a caveat there. It's not going to destroy all agencies. It won't destroy all traditional agencies, but will some agencies go out of business because of AI? I think 100%. We've already seen agencies go out of business because of or have to do dramatic pivots, right? I mean, if you look at content agencies, were probably the first that were hit very hard. So people that were doing, kind of these like content farms that were producing lots and lots of blog posts for, small businesses, medium, enterprise, right? They're producing lots of social media images. They were producing email copy, right? Those
That should
businesses
already be dead, right? Like, why would someone even use that agency? Maybe to some extent, but
Well, I mean, I think if you have an untrained person using AI, i.e., a business owner, and you have a
okay.
trained expert using AI, a copywriter, right? My assumption is that the trained expert will be able to produce a better work product with those tools than the ones that don't. But that being said, I'm sure there was lots of agencies that had, they did not pivot. They didn't aggressively evolve their business, and they either lost a substantial amount of their revenue because clients said, "Hey, I can do this myself." Right? If the business was not providing any kind of value added service to what ChatGPT could output, like if a business owner could have taken their input and gone to chat and put that in there and gotten a piece of content, or they could have used the content agency and gotten the same output, then why? Of course, the agency is not going to survive. But I think what I've actually seen in our own content team, 3 years kind of post AI, is where our content team's growing, right? Because we're very AI first, a very AI enabled agency. So, our content team is aggressively using these tools. And so they're producing, way more content, but also much better content than a small business owner could produce. And also when you start thinking about things like SEO, AEO, it's not just about who can produce the fastest content, but who can produce the content that gets the traffic. So that's, everybody has the AI tools, and just having Claude, having chat is not a defensible moat. It's not a competitive edge anymore. It's permission to play. And so you have to, I think, in order to get that traffic, you have to do better than just writing, doing basic prompting. And so we've actually seen our content team more than double in size in the last year. So
Okay, that's actually interesting. So content. What about the?
Well, I mean, yeah. So I think I just presented at our we have an event called Vistara. It's an AI it's an event all around AI for agencies. We just had just about 300 agencies in Austin that joined us for 3 days, and I opened the event talking about kind of the death of the traditional agency. And I introduced a new concept called the agentic agency. And I think that we're in a transitory period of going from the traditional to the agentic. But I think that's, in my mind, an agency of people and agents is definitely the future, where it's more about building systems that deliver the work than it is about, doing the work. If we think about, building a WordPress website, for example, like at E2M, we have agents that don't do the entire process like soup to nuts for like a big site build. But like, if we look at all of the sub jobs to be done, in that process, there's a growing portion of those jobs that are being done by agents. And so I imagine as the tech gets better, as we have more time to build those agents in a year, in 18 months, we might get to a point where we just have a WordPress agent that can do all of the jobs, right? And it can build the sites, it can do all the things. And then what do you have, right? Are you still building websites? Of course. Are websites still a key part of running a business? Of course. But the building of them is, we're not paying somebody by the hour to write CSS, right? Like that, those times are gone for the most part, right?
Let's stop for a second, guys. This podcast and web hosting today as a whole would not exist without our sponsors. Monarchs, Patchstack, Atarim, Extendify, NameHero, and AdminBolt. If you enjoy what we do and want your company to be part of it, just reach out to us. Okay, I'll get back to this topic, but then I guess we need a little introduction of you. And
Yeah.
tell me about you. You are involved in E2M. It's a white label agency, putting it simply. Yeah, so tell me about your experience. You've been through the agency business for many years, from owning an agency, then through building community, and now you've joined E2M as a CEO, right? So tell me about your journey, about your experience, and about the company that you're representing now.
Yeah. I appreciate that, Conrad. So you're absolutely right. So I'm currently CEO of E2M. We're a white label digital agency. We provide website services that covers WordPress, high level, Duda, Webflow, Shopify, BigCommerce, digital marketing services. So AEO, SEO, GEO, PPC, Meta, advertising. We also do AI services. So that could be automations, AI systems, and then building these tools and agents for agencies has become a really big part of our business. So an agency comes in and, says, hey, we've got this branding process, this design process, this SEO process, and we want to build tools to help us do this job faster and better, and without human hours, right? And so we're building all those tools. Right now we have a team of just over 400 people, based in India, Canada, and the United States. We acquired a company called Dot & Company last year. They do fractional account management. So that's kind of an interesting kind of growing part of our business. And we serve about over 400 agency partners that are active. My first agency I started in 1999. I didn't call it an agency. I didn't really even call it a business. I just, somebody needed a website and I built a website for $500. And I set a goal of, I wanted to make $1 million selling websites. And when I was 17, that seemed like a really big number. Like I don't know if you saw Austin Powers when he's like, $1 million. That was kind of like in my head. I'm like, that's a big number, right? When you're 17 and you're making $7 an hour or whatever, working at a neighborhood store, like $500 is a lot of money, right? And so, yeah, I started building websites, and eventually I realized I had a business, and then that became kind of a web agency. I hired contractors and then, employees, and then got an office and started to learn about what it takes to grow a business, and joining entrepreneur groups and hiring consultants and coaches, and getting your own masters in business through experience and hard knocks and investment, right? But yeah, that agency, I ran that agency until 2012, and we actually started doing some building some templates and tutorials for a different website platform, and that was kind of a different business model for us, and we decided to sell the agency and focus on that training and consulting business full time. And so that was a company called UGURUS, and that had a good run. We ran UGURUS from 2012 to 2025. In that business, it got acquired and then reacquired, first by Cloudways, then by DigitalOcean. And so I got to spend some, about 4 years in the hosting space, building community, growing a hosting brand, growing Cloudways to, over 9 figures in revenue. So that was exciting, and being a part of DigitalOcean was exciting. Being a part of this I think DO now has over $1 billion in annual revenues, and just
Yeah, it's just
being a
crazy.
part of
Yeah.
that organization, it was cool to see a different side of the website business. I'd always been on the service side, and then getting into the infrastructure side was cool, right? I think it just what it takes to keep the internet running. So
Yeah.
that's my TLDR. 30 years and 2 minutes.
There you go. So it's also how I started getting into the internet and trying to make some money was basically building websites. I went a different route and focused on becoming a programmer. But that's actually very interesting that it kind of started the same. And I was also around 16 years old or 17, I guess, when I started making some stuff and making some solid money actually out there. When is the best time to sell a hosting company? Is it now or maybe in 5 years? The truth is, there is no simple answer. Every situation is different. That is why it helps to talk to someone with real experience in hosting M&A, someone who deals with this every day. If you want to understand your options, get in touch with us for an honest conversation. Completely confidential, no commitments. So one thing about UGURUS, because that was actually a pretty interesting initiative. So you were gathering a community of agencies, right?
Yep.
Can you also tell what happened? Because it was eventually shut down by DigitalOcean, which is actually interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was certainly challenging, time to go through that process. And we had a great team, we had a great community, but I think we were a tiny little drop in DigitalOcean's revenue, and we were also a different type of revenue. So we were a coaching, we were a service business, and so inside of at least at that time. Now I don't know. There's been a lot of talk about. There's been a lot of talk about, software and services and what that looks like. And I think that conversation has started in the last 3 to 6 months. And, I think that maybe, I don't know if I bet the same decision would be made, right? Ultimately, DigitalOcean is an infrastructure company. They're a compute company. And I think that, a year ago and really even a year and a half ago, they kind of realized they were maybe behind on some of the AI initiatives, and they decided to get really aggressive and kind of ruthlessly focus on their core business. And I think that was the right call for them. I mean, I think
Yeah,
ultimately,
absolutely.
like they, as a business owner, you have to protect the asset and you have to make sure that the core business runs effectively. And so, well, we were a very different type of business. And so, it was like, I think it was great for them to have a community and to have like this coaching and consulting brand. I think people had a very good experience with UGURUS. So I think it was a net add in terms of brand equity. We were growing in terms of revenue, but it was such a different business that they just decided, this isn't something that they wanted to focus on. So
Yeah. Yeah, as you said, we are talking about 1 billion company, right? That is specifically targeting infrastructure. So I guess it just was not in line.
yeah, so I mean, they made the call that they did a reduction in force. They cut quite a handful of different roles at that time, and the decision was made in that RIF to let go of the UGURUS business unit. And they
Yeah.
consolidated some of their teams into like hubs. My team that I was managing at the time was based in Pakistan. I was based in the United States, and so even though I was doing other things outside of UGURUS, because of the geographic, where I was
Yeah.
or where my team was, just didn't make sense. So at this
Yeah.
point, it's water under the bridge. I think we did a lot of work to help our team get established. Several of those team members have joined me at E2M or are working at E2M. Several people spun off and did their own thing, and we did our best to help those folks, bridge into their next ventures. And it's I'm proud of what we built over those years, and
Yeah.
I think we impacted a lot of lives. And sometimes if you decide to sell your business at some point, when it's like selling a car or a house, right? Like you can't sell your house and then come back a year later and start telling people, that you don't like the furniture or that you don't like that they got rid of the front yard, right? Like you can't, you sell your business, right? You give up some of that control. And so you give up all of that control. And so that certainly was the case with the UGURUS brand.
Right. And DigitalOcean focused on AI.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I guess we need to get back to the initial
do it.
topic. So in terms of agencies, what do you think, or if you were an agency owner, a smaller one, right? I'm not talking about your case where 400 people is actually a pretty big scale as for an agency, right? But if you had an agency of, let's say, 20 people, would that be a small agency? What would you do? What would you recommend to anyone who's running an agency now? What to focus on? How to protect yourself or prepare yourself, your company, for the changes that is clearly happening right now?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I mean, you should be, I think aggressively using AI is permission to play. That's like table stakes, right? Like everybody is using AI as an assistant throughout the day. Everybody, I think, for the most part in the agency space is building or tinkering. I think you should be enabling your team to use AI, but there's kind of these different stages, right? Like the traditional agency is not really using AI much or at all, right? Then there's kind of this AI first agency, and that's where you have everybody is the org chart looks the exact same. It's still like designer, developer, copywriter, SEO, right? You still have all of the same people, but everybody's using AI as their kind of as a primary tool in their day-to-day work. They're using AI assistants. They're using Cursor. They're using Claude. They're using Figma Make, right? They're using the AI tools, right, in their daily jobs. But it's ultimately the same org chart. And so I think at a minimum, you have to become an AI first agency. Now,
Mm-hmm.
an agentic agency is different because an agentic agency, the agents are doing the delivery work. And so I think in order to build an agentic agency, you actually have to kind of break the paradigm of you can't just go to your current team. Like the likelihood that you would go to a copywriter and hand them Claude and say, I want you to build yourself out of a job, right? Like there's some basic like human psychology that,
Yeah.
people have a really hard time, making decisions that might directly impact their livelihood.
Oh, I know.
You can't go to a web designer and say, hey, you're building these websites for me. It's what you do day in, day out. I want you to build an agent that does your job, right? Because that team member
Yeah.
is going to say, well, what happens when I'm done, right? And now you could, as a kind, empathetic, generous manager, say, well, we'll find you another position. Now that may or may not be a promise that an agency owner can keep, because if you have a team member that sits in a seat and you build an agent that does that seat as good or better, you may or may not have another seat in your business, and also whether or not that team member wants to sit in that other seat. And these are our basic questions, right? So what I think, and I've looked at different business models and kind of when this has happened in other industries, right? So a good example of this is Netflix, right? So streaming as a technology, streaming was created a decade or more before Netflix adopted, probably 20 years. I mean, beginning of the internet, right? We could stream video. It was terrible. It was
Yeah.
awful quality. Like the difference between streaming and a DVD was like very clear. Right? DVD was a much better experience as a customer, and so it made sense to get a DVD by mail or drive across town and go and pick up a box and take it home and
Yeah.
open it and stick it into the machine, because the quality was seamless, right? It's this, so the
Yeah.
quality wasn't there. So what Netflix did, they didn't go to their current team. Like, so Netflix had the DVD business. They did launch the streaming business. It was all part of one company. But I think what they realized was, as long as they had this cash cow, the core DVD business, they weren't going to fully invest in the new model. And so once they realized that this was where things were headed, which I think that's the moment we are in right now with agencies and agents and AI, they spun out the streaming business, or rather they spun off the DVD business. They separated the DVD business. They didn't go down to their pack and ship team and say, hey, person stuffing these DVDs in an envelope, we want you to come over and build a vertically scalable encoding engine on Amazon, right? Like, those people, those are just fundamentally different skill sets, different mindsets, different. Not that somebody that is doing pack and ship DVDs can't retrain themselves, go to a coding boot camp, learn how to be a DevOps engineer, right? Certainly people can retrain themselves, but you can't wait for 1,000 people or 10,000 people or 100 people. You can't wait for them to retrain, right? You have to say, look, what is the new job? Who do I need to hire, right? So Netflix built a new team. They probably took some of their best people from their old team and they built a new company. They firewalled that company. They separated that company from the old company, and they built the new company. I call that kind of a burn your boats strategy, right? There was no going back. You couldn't be at the streaming part of Netflix and say, oh, but I still want to optimize the DVD business, right? It was like you're working in two completely different companies. And so I've looked at, and this is kind of how we're approaching this at E2M. We were trying, and we still are, like there's still a lot of innovation that we can bring to the traditional process. We can give them Claude Code licenses. We can give them lots of tokens, right? We can definitely do things to improve. But our team members that are building agents that produce work are fundamentally different skill sets than those team members that are producing work. And that's kind of the difference, right? An AI first team member, it's a team member building websites using AI to assist their work. An agentic agency is a team member that is engineering a system that builds a website. And those are two very different things. And I think that shift is going to be, it is a very uncomfortable shift to make as a business owner, because you have to, in some ways, you have to realize like, okay, this is a different type of team member. They're starting with a different skill set. They don't maybe have all the baggage of years of doing things a certain way. What we've done at E2M for our AI services team is we've hired, very early people in their careers where they don't have, they're willing to use these tools in ways that more experienced people really resist. So that's something that we're investing big in is building our company as an agentic agency. We see that as the future.
I can relate to that because I am now also working on AI systems. I have Conrado AI, which is a system that is enhancing support teams. And actually the biggest challenge is resistance from the team, right? The guys who are supposedly use AI to become faster and more efficient are they're thinking that this is now the way to replace them. So we better not use that tool. We better not adapt because we're gonna get kicked out. The reality is, if you don't adapt, it's gonna be bad anyway.
Yeah. I mean, humans we're very self-interested, right? I mean, that's why an economic platform, I think, like capitalism works, is because we all kind of individually act in our own self-interest. But the challenge with that is that if you don't do it, somebody else will. And if you look at why did the cab business lose out to Uber? Well, because it was so much easier. The experience was so much better, right? I could, Uber is just an app. That's all it is. Like they don't own the cars. They don't employ the drivers. They contract them. And, like by and large, there's a lot of pieces of the Uber business model that are less good than the old cab model in terms of control and safety and that kind of stuff. But they made the waiting for a cab much more enjoyable because you could press a button on your phone. You could see where the car was at. You could get in. It was just a much easier. You didn't have to worry about, giving them your credit card and your cash or all that kind of stuff. And I think right now you're going to have agencies that start up and they're agentic from day one. And, when an agentic agency owner goes and meets with a client, they're focused on, the outcomes. What outcomes do you want? What are you trying to accomplish as a business? They're talking about those types of things. I might be sitting down with the client and the client says, hey, we need a new brand. We need a new website. We need a contact form. We need a marketing funnel. We need a shopping cart to order gift cards or whatever, right? And you go through this discovery with them. Now, the agentic agency has an agent or a team of agents that's going to produce this work. And they might sit with the client for an hour, 90 minutes, and when the client says, well, how much? They might say, well, 10,000. Okay, cool. Well, when am I going to have it? Well, I'm going to press a button and you're going to have it right now, right? Or you could pay me 10,000 and I'll spend 3 months building all of this. Which do you want? Right?
Yeah.
You pay me 10,000, get it right away, or pay me 10,000, right? The competing agency, the traditional agency, pay me $10,000 and it's going to take us 3 months to build all this stuff. And you're going to get the same product. Which is the business? Which proposal is the business owner going to take? Now, you could simply say, well, if you can do it like that, is it really worth 10,000 anymore? I don't know, right? I mean, that's.
Yeah.
But again,
That's what I wanted to ask, actually.
if I'm a customer and my option is 10,000 in 3 months or 10,000 right now, I think the savvy customer is going to say, well, I'll take the right now, of course, right? And so, I mean, that's the agentic agency model, right? Now, that wasn't possible 2 years ago. You couldn't go have a meeting with a client and press a button and have, burn $500 or $1,000 in tokens and produce all those assets. You can do that now, right? You can build an agent to do that. You can build in your own IP as an agency, your own systems, your own frameworks. Now, the best people that are suited to do this stuff are the people that are already agency owners, that already have the expertise. They already have the subject matter. They know what it takes to build. They know what a great performing website looks like. They know what the outcome looks like. And those are the best people to build those systems because they can take their own intellectual property that they've built up over the last 10 or 20 years, and they can build that into the agents. And then they have tools now that can produce that work at a scale that we've never experienced before, and at a speed that we've never experienced before. And so, I give the example of, back to our streaming analogy. People did not really binge watch DVDs because if I bought a season of the show Lost, right? Let's say I bought season 1, at Netflix, you couldn't get the whole season, right? The season might be 7 discs, and I could get the first 2 discs or 3 discs, depending on my membership level, right? So I would get the first 2 discs in the mail, and then I'd watch the first disc, and then I'd have to go put the DVD back in the mail, and I'd have to send it back, right? If this feels like the current agency process, right? Like I'd send that DVD back, and then I'd have to wait, right? And so if you just binge watch the whole 2 discs, then you're done. And you're like, I have nothing else to watch, right? So people didn't binge in the same way, right? Streaming created binging, right? You have binge watching. You can take your phone. I can take my phone and I can sit in the bath and I can watch a movie. Like nobody took their DVD player and their TV into the bath, right? Like you can sit there and if you drop your phone in the bath these days, like it's fine, right? Now, so those are what happened was streaming. It opened up new modes of consumption. And so, yes, building websites or doing some of this stuff is you can be radically different in terms of the time it takes to produce this stuff, which I think for a savvy agency owner means that you can do more for your client. You can do more for the same amount of money. Even with AI, I still haven't met, Conrad. I have not met the client that wants fewer things than the money they have in their pocket. I've never met that client. I don't know if you've met that client. Have you ever met somebody that like wants less than they have, right? I mean, human nature is like everybody wants more, right? Like I've never met the client that says, "Oh, I'm good with just, my digital marketing is complete. We finished all the digital marketing," right? Like that doesn't happen, right? Like the clients, there's always another thing around the corner. There's always one more thing that they want. And so I don't think AI I don't know anybody that's working less because of AI.
That brings me into a couple of questions, actually, because you've mostly touched the operation side of this. But I guess the questions are, don't you think the demand will be still there? Or do you think that some of the clients will look into making things on their own? Like in terms of market and potential customer that were coming before, but now, I don't know. Do you think that as an agency, should I expect a demand? Should I expect the customers will expect smaller prices? Like, what do you think will happen in the market from the demand point of view?
Well, let's separate price from revenue. Will you be able to charge the same amount of money for the same deliverables? I don't think so. Right. I think that's the price per deliverable. If you're talking about things that can be easily substituted by AI tech, right? So things that used to take a long time and we charged a lot of money for them because they took a long time. Those things are taking less time. So I don't think you can charge the same price for the same work. How much your client wants, how much work they now want from you as an agency or service provider, I think has exponentially gone up.
Okay.
And so I think we have to do more for our clients to get the same results. So let's take a thought experiment for a second. Hopefully your listeners like thinking like this. Okay, this is some of the stuff I think about, Conrad. So I just assume either other people think about it or they don't, and they should. But let's say you've got 100 plumbers in Denver, Colorado, and you have 100,000 customers for those 100 plumbers. Okay, 100 plumbers, 100,000 customers. Did AI create any more customers?
No, I don't think so.
Nope. 100 plumbers, 100,000 customers. AI did not change that at all. So you've got 100 plumbers. 50 of them decide to do their own marketing. Have you ever met a plumber?
Sorry, did I
Have
met
you
a
ever
plumber?
met a plumber? Yeah.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Okay. So imagine that plumber in your mind. 50
Yes.
of those plumbers are going to do their own marketing.
No.
50 of those plumbers are going to hire an agency that is an agentic agency or an AI first agency. Who gets the 100,000 customers? Everybody's got the same tools. Maybe the agencies have some of their own tools because they're building agents and they're building agentic systems and they're studying how to get customers, right? So you've got 100 plumbers, 50 of them decide to use their own Claude code, their own, tools, and 50 of them hire an agency to help them get those 100,000 customers. Who gets the 100,000 customers? The plumbers with the agencies or the plumbers without the agencies?
I wouldn't say every. Okay, I get your point. So the better effects can be expected from an agency that knows the
Probably,
stuff.
right? We can probably make some safe assumptions that the plumbers that hire the agencies, because everybody has the same, there's at least a baseline democratization of access to tools. So just the 50 plumbers that do it themselves, they all have access to the same tools. They all have access to Claude. They all have access to chat. These aren't competitive advantages. These are basic. It'd be like running around saying electricity is a competitive advantage. It's not a nobody says like, how are you going to get customers? I'm going to use electricity, right? Like AI is electricity. It's a commonly accessible tool, right? Intelligence as a tech is now available to everyone, right? Now we're in a transitory time. So some of these people are going to be savvier than others, right? But ultimately, AI didn't invent any more customers. Now, a follow-up question to this is, will it be easier to get those customers or will it be more difficult?
From the agency point of view or from the plumber point of view?
100,000 customers, 100 plumbers. They're all using AI. They're building things faster. They're building things more sophisticated. Is it going to be easier to build the systems to get those 100,000 customers, or is it going to be more difficult?
More difficult, I would say.
It is going to be infinitely more complicated. So, I'm a business owner. It's infinitely more challenging for me to get customers. Do I do this on my own, or do I get help?
Okay, it would make sense to get help.
Agencies are fine. Will some agencies lose their lunch because they're not using these tools? 100%. Will some agencies become short-term winner-take-all where they will do something that proves to be a competitive advantage in their niche because this stuff doesn't get applied uniformly. It's complex. Markets are complex, right? They happen slowly, right? But you'll have agencies that build very complex mousetraps that people then see and they hire that agency because they can get better results. They emulate whatever tactic or strategy that agency is doing. And then it raises the bar. It raises the bar again. It raises the bar, right? Everybody wants those 100,000 customers, right? So everybody's building more and more complex mousetraps to find those customers. And so in my experience, Conrad, the last 30 years, things just keep getting more complicated. And the more complicated they get, the more business there is for experts. Look at industries like finance. Everybody thought that spreadsheets were going to put the accountant out of business. What did spreadsheets do? They just made business get more complicated, right? It created opportunity to create even fancier business models that created bigger scale, that created economic growth. The pie grew, right? And that, I think AI is going to grow the pie ultimately, right? It's going to increase complexity. I think agencies are going to be just fine, assuming that they have their eyes open, that they're building the technology, that they're participating in this stuff, right? If they're head in the sand, if they're like, hey, I'm anti-AI, it's not, this tech isn't good enough. I mean, just imagine somebody like, 10 years ago, if somebody said, Blu-ray is better than streaming, I mean, they were technically correct, right? In that moment, they were 100% correct. Blu-ray did create a better viewing experience than streaming, right? There was,
Nobody remembers Blu-ray. Actually, DVD is easier to relate to now than
right.
Blu-ray.
But like, so there was a period where DVD was better than streaming. There was a very long period, and everybody that said, DVD is better than streaming was correct. Now, people that said, oh, streaming will never be better than DVDs, those people were incorrect. And so I think if we look at AI right now, the people that say, look, there are some things today that are better done by a person than AI. They are, in a lot of cases, they are correct. The problem is that if you're not learning how to use this stuff, it's going to sneak up on you when the AI system actually becomes much better than the person. And then if you've got the team that's still the old way and you haven't built any agentic systems and you haven't built any agents, then you're going to be in a situation where you're having to make some really hard decisions and make those decisions very quickly. And you'll be like, well, I don't know what happened. I don't know. Like, nobody's signing up for my services anymore. Well, yeah, because it's like the cabs, right? Nobody's calling the cab number anymore. What happened? Well, yeah, they made a tech, and at first it didn't seem like it was a problem until it was. And then all of a sudden, nobody was calling anymore, and you might be thinking, you're going to start to blame, all the other things versus realizing, hey, I heard Conrad and Brent talking about this in 2026. I heard Brent talking about this in 2025. I heard him, so it's like if you're hearing this and you're not making those significant investments, you're probably going to experience some kind of pain.
I'm going to be left behind.
It's the short-term pain, long-term gain. So make the investments today, and you'll do well, I think, over the long term. Or, hey, short-term gain. I'm not going to spend the money today. I'm not going to spend the time. I'm going to have a short-term gain, but it's going to open me up to some long-term pain.
That's interesting. Should we relate that somehow to web hosting? No. Do you think that the web hosting industry will somehow have to adapt into this new thing, into this new model? Do you think they will be affected at all in terms of like tools, technology they are offering? Do you see any shift in this area?
Well, I mean, yeah, they've got to be able to host agents, right? I mean, I think ultimately hosting agents, hosting applications. I mean, we're launching dozens of AI-powered dashboards for our clients. All of those dashboards are hosted applications. Our Amazon Web Services bill, our DigitalOcean bill has only gone up. Now, if I'm a host and I'm just hosting WordPress websites, and I'm not hosting agents, and I'm not experimenting with how we can enable our websites to have agents like PHP workers like running in the background to facilitate traffic and transactions and do those things. If I'm not exploring that area, then I'm probably facing some of those potential headwinds. But agents have to be hosted, right? They have to be accessible. They have to. I have a Claude agent that I use as an assistant. That Claude agent has to, I'm sorry, not Claude, OpenClaw. I have an OpenClaw agent, and that OpenClaw agent has to be hosted somewhere, right? It's a self-hosted application. So I think, and that thing is running all the time, and I'm burning compute. It's a thing. So I think that hosting is, as a broad market, hosting is fine. How does that impact like how many websites there are, how much traffic comes from websites, how much traffic is humans versus agents. I don't really know the answer to those questions. I don't know how that's going to pan out, but I can tell you that I think hosting software, which is what an agent is, right? I mean, hosting software is, I think that market is going to grow dramatically. I think everybody is going to have, I've got an agent that's doing my grocery shopping.
There you go.
Like, hey, that's a piece of code that's running and solving a problem. I mean, how many little jobs, right? I got to balance my bank account every month, right? I got to go through and reconcile things. I bought this on Amazon. Is this groceries? Is it personal? We got to do it. That's a thing that I do every Sunday, right? I sit down for 30 minutes. Hey, that's AI can do 80-90% of that, right? I've got to have an agent that does that, right? So that's a hosted app. So I think that the internet of hosting is going to only grow, right? We're going to have agents. The things that people are going to come up with to have agents do is going to be mind melting, right? And all of those agents need to be hosted somewhere. So I think broadly the hosting business, what I've heard from hosting leaders is, if you look at the stocks, right? Look at Microsoft, look at Amazon, look at these companies that are look at DigitalOcean, right? I mean, DigitalOcean, their stock has 5x since I was there a year ago, right? So I think hosting is fine. I think people see that infrastructure is even more necessary now. But I think people have to, probably think creatively about what they're hosting and how they enable agents and all that kind of stuff. And that's a conversation maybe for another day or outside of my zone of expertise, Conrad.
Yeah, exactly. So that really covers the topic that things are changing and you need to adapt. If you adapt, then you can win. It's actually interesting what you said, that some agencies or some business owners say that they are proudly saying that they are not using AI. There was a trend like that a couple of months ago, but now there's less and less people that are agreeing to that. We can see the change, and if you don't adapt as a business owner, whether you're an agency, whether you are a hosting business or pretty much anything, especially digital, then you're definitely gonna have a hard time with your competition. That's essentially what it is.
I mean, there's still people that are like, I flew into Austin the other day and it was going to take, the Ubers were backed up by 20 minutes. And I said, you know what, there's a cab line. There was literally nobody in the cab line. No human, like there was 10 cabs and there was nobody in that line. I took a cab, right? And it was like I could wait 20 minutes for an Uber to pick up my ride or whatever, or I could just literally walk up and take this. And it was the old way, right? Like, will there still be the old way, right? Like, I think a few years, I went to stay in a remote cabin up in the mountains, and they didn't have a Starlink, and there was a DVD player, and there was DVDs, and I took out a DVD. My kids are like, "Hey, what are we gonna watch?" I'm like, "Well, you got these 9 movies," and they're like, "Why can't we watch whatever we want?" I'm like, "Because this is how it used to work, right?" So when will the last DVD be sold? I don't know, right? I mean, I think it takes a long time for things like that to fade out. So will there be a market for, a friend of mine was a Flash designer, and he had already become financially independent and financially free. And he looked me dead in the face and I was like, "What are you going to pivot to?" And he was like, "I'm not going to pivot. I'm going to do Flash until the last person requests Flash." He's like, "I'm just going to do this and then I'm going to retire." Right? Because he's like, "I don't need it." And it was interesting. He continued to make a 6-figure income for like 8 years longer than I thought you could possibly.
Wow.
I was like, Flash is dead, right? But he continued because there was these like little niche markets for ads that still delivered Flash. There was still maintenance on premise-based systems that were using Flash applications to run their touch screens and stuff like that. I mean, it was like, I thought it was going to be like dead and gone. And then he ended up being the last dude like doing ActionScript, and he actually was able to like make it. So I don't know. I think you'll have those people that decide to not get on the bus and they decide to not do this. And maybe some of them will be okay. Maybe others will, have to learn some hard lessons. I don't know, Conrad.
Yeah, let's end with that, Brent. Thank you for the interview.
Thanks, Conrad.